Hello and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock tomorrow morning. And of course at midnight, the programme is entirely yours. I hand it over to you with love because it is a phone-in, a whole hour. There is no guests, there's nothing, it's just you and me. And so the conversation I want to have with you at midnight is surrounding this story here. A group of top male footballers are planning to come out as gay and have set an announcement date for next month. It is the 17th of May, which also happens to be International Day Against Homophobia. Now, this isn't Britain's footballers, heaven forfend. I can't imagine that happening even in this day and age, but it is the German Bundesliga, so a decent level of football. And these men are going to come out as gay. Could it ever happen here? Could we ever see that? I know that one or two footballers have come out as gay, but the law of averages is that you're watching a team with gay players in it. You just don't know it yet. So what does it matter? And why does it matter? And why is there homophobia in football? Well, in men's football. Because most, a lot of the women sports people are gay. A lot of them are. I mean, I don't think, not all of them, but a lot of them are. And that doesn't matter at all, does it? But why does it matter if your team has gay players in it? And extending that a little bit further, do we need to have people come out so publicly these days? Because surely we don't really care in the nicest possible way. That is kind of like, oh, good for you. Well, it doesn't bother me. Mind you, I do have a disproportionately ridiculous number of gay friends. So maybe it's just that's my world. But I can't see a problem with it. I'd love to hear from you as to whether you think it'll ever happen in English football or British football, whether you think it should, whether you care, and what it's like to be gay really at the moment and having to come out. Do you have to come out all the time, or do you just do it the once in a big way? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. You can send a WhatsApp as well to the same number, 0344 499 1000. And you can text the word talk and then your message to 87222, whether you're gay or straight. I don't mind. Just get in touch. With me in the studio, though, is Van Connor, who's here as a film critic, to go through the papers. Van, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because it's not just football, it's Hollywood too. That a lot of actors will be gay and they won't, even today, won't come out. Why?
I think in the case of Hollywood, that has changed somewhat dramatically over the past 25 years. You have to remember that particular point in the mid-90s, for instance, when Ellen DeGeneres came out. And what a watershed moment that was. So that was kind of the biggest earth-shattering thing that hit the entertainment industry that year, really. But in the case of the entertainment industry, it's just always been an accepted reality of the entertainment industry that there are, X percentage of gay performers in there. With something like professional sports, that's obviously a lot more buttoned down, closeted a profession.
You just got to wonder why, though, because I cannot imagine. I mean, if you're watching your team and you are convinced there are no gay players in it, you're probably wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Just the law of averages. And if they're a good footballer, does it matter?
It comes down to two words, that one for me, and it comes down ultimately to toxic masculinity.
Right.
And it comes down to that dynamic between the toxic side of the male psyche and homophobia, effectively, and how those two very much go hand in hand. And I think it is going to take a watershed moment in British sports when a number of prominent players come forward in unison, united, and say, we are here
while they're still
proud.
Playing. Yeah.
While they're still playing. Don't wait until you've retired. Come out and be proud. And we saw this in rugby very briefly a few years ago. There was a very brief moment in rugby when a number of players came forward. And I think football is overdue for that, because there needs to be this detachment. I've always struggled with this with football in general anyway, that detachment between the toxic masculinity and the football in general, because to be honest with you, I'm 40 years old and I have never been able really to detach that toxic side from my perception of football.
Well, I suppose it's because I was talking earlier, Van, about the idea of the racism on the terraces, and you'll get teams who are shouting racist abuse and all of those things to players on the opposite team who happen to be of colour. But the players on their own team that are black or brown, I don't get it. If you're racist, aren't you racist?
It's racist when convenient. I think it's racist unless you like them, kind of a thing. It always seems to be the way with footballers. One of the things I always struggled with the sort of the outward depiction of, for instance, football culture, for instance, is I've always struggled with the sort of bullying side of it. I've seen a lot of it on trains over the years, because there's always an overlap between Comic-Cons and football matches on trains coming from the north, where you see like a lot of like older loutish guys in football shirts and then young kids in like Harry Potter costumes, and they will literally gang up on me. So I'm thinking, like, you do realise you're in cosplay as well, right? You're a grown man in cosplay. Yeah. The only difference is that there's not a chance that they're ever going to get to go to Hogwarts. You feasibly could have become a professional footballer like the billionaire whose shirt you're wearing. Yeah. The only difference is you failed. Yeah. Just gotta get some perspective on that. So it's like I've always struggled with this toxicity of the culture.
I just can't imagine why they would have, why there's any issue with anybody, but particularly with a gay player, if they're at that level. What does it matter?
I think it gets incredibly funny if you start actually like traversing back through the evolutionary, like, sociological history of athleticism, and you go back to like, ye olden times of Roman gladiators and things like that, and you start to think, yeah, maybe be a little bit less on the homophobic stakes. Yeah, exactly. There, just for the sake of history.
Yeah. And it's okay to be gay if you're a female professional sports person.
I would argue it's okay to be gay for a female, full stop, but yes, professional football as well.
But also, it should be okay for men as well. Right, Van, let's have a look at the newspapers, and we're kicking off with The Guardian. And I do want to just have a look at this picture. It's an extraordinary image. Why? There's 4 people were taken to hospital after several military horses broke loose during a morning exercise, and 2 bolted through the city centre, colliding with vehicles. And the grey there on the front page, covered in blood. Yeah. Extraordinary image. And it's quite interesting for me, because I know these horses are incredibly well trained, and they don't normally bolt at loud noises. But this was a van, I think, that backfired.
Was it bricklayers?
Typical van, causing all this trouble. But it was a van,
always blaming a van.
Yeah, that caused the issue. But quite an amazing image there.
I'm very curious. I was talking to Mia, producer Mia, before the show, about the white horse with all the blood, who apparently had hit a bus. He'd hit one of the tourist buses, had gone into the windshield of, and there's a picture in one of the papers of the windshield itself.
So this is the horse's own blood.
I'm not. I think it must be, but that's quite a lot of blood, and it is ridiculously vibrant blood. Yeah, this wasn't even bright. A particularly sunny day, but whoever got that picture, we need to be paid.
I mean, those horses must have been terrified.
Military, as I say, they must.
Yeah, must have been terrified to be. Even just then galloping through the city. But I remember one time my younger brother was exercising somebody's horse. It was a small horse. It wasn't a pony. It was a small horse, and he was exercising it for somebody. And he came home. He rode home, and he tied the horse's reins to a dustbin. And of course,
did the horse take the dustbin? Got it.
Yeah, the horse then bolted. And the dustbin kept hitting it on the back of the legs, which meant that it bolted for miles. And I remember all of us kids, because we were all riders, we were all very good at riding, but we had to then Mum had to get in cars and things like that to try and go. But every time this horse sort of slowed down a bit, the bin would hit him on the back of the legs again, and off he'd go. And it took hours. Honestly, we literally had to wait until he'd worn himself out and then gone, I don't care about the bin anymore. Terrible.
Was this back in the days, the actual old-fashioned silver metal bins?
No, it wasn't.
It
was just a black plastic bin, I seem to remember. But still, that was embarrassing. So that's The Guardian. Right, the front page of The Guardian as well says Labour pledges to nationalise the rail network within 5 years. Now, I vaguely remember the nationalised railways. They were rubbish.
Were they actually?
Terrible.
Because we were talking about this
Nobody
earlier.
Ever cleaned them. Yeah. Nobody took responsibility. And also the railways have been broken down so much now. There are so many different companies. Also, a different company owns the track to the train, and the different company owns the engine and it's all like they'd never be able to agree on anything.
This is the thing.
And we could never afford to nationalise it either.
That's it. It's now, as you say, it's so fragmented now that it's can you reverse Humpty Dumpty this? Can you put all the pieces back together again? And in many ways, we're going to have the same debate in 15, 20 years with the EU. It's going to be one of those things. When it eventually comes up that we want back in, it's going to be a question of, can you put those pieces back together? And after you've spent so many decades
smashing them up,
dismantling them and breaking them down to so many core components. And, I mean, to be fair, I don't think arguably it could be more, any worse than the current standard of rail service, which is abysmal. It's a miracle I make it in every time.
It's appalling. But I mean, I can't imagine that if it is a Labour government, I can't imagine that the very unionised railways aren't going to try and take advantage of that.
Absolutely.
And ask for more cash.
That's it. If you think it's bad now, it can be a lot worse.
I just know that whenever I've interviewed people like Christian Walmar, who's a genius on the railway networks, we literally can't afford it. It's hundreds of billions of pounds it would cost to renationalise. And actually what Labour are talking about is establishing a new watchdog, because that's what we need, is another layer of management.
Of course.
To stuff their pockets.
The governmental solution to everything.
Yeah, let's have a watchdog. Let's have a quango that deals with this. It is not going to work. I'm telling you that now. It's not going to happen.
Never say never, but you're saying never.
Yeah, my dad used to be the transport correspondent for the BBC, and he was always talking about the railways then. Right, let's have a look at the Daily Star, and they've been at it again with their Pritt stick and their cutouts. I love it.
But they will tell you all you've ever needed to know about marshmallows. I mean,
which they are not sweets.
Well,
did you know that?
I did not know that.
A judge has ruled that they are ingredients.
Oh.
They are not sweets because the makers of them took it to court because the government wanted VAT. And you don't have to pay VAT on ingredients. Oh. So the company who makes them was set to get a massive VAT bill, and they took it to court, and the judge said, nah. They're ingredients. They're not sweets. And they're not vatable. You
put a marshmallow in a s'more, that's all I need to know.
That's an ingredient, then, you see.
I put marshmallows in my hot chocolate at Christmas.
That's an ingredient, then. You see? It's not a standalone. Anyway, just days after warning the full English breakfast is dying out, another cheery food boffin says greasy fry-ups will turn us into zombies. And they've rather brilliantly
pictured a zombie,
with that we're talking about is highly processed food. It's creating a nation of insomniac zombies. But on the plus side, they taste really, really good.
I mean, to be fair,
you love a bit of junk food, don't you?
Well, no, I've recently gone back on my keto.
Oh, have you?
And I have a few more lumps and bumps to smooth out, you know what I mean? You can't hurry perfection.
No, keto, you can't have all the carbs.
Well, you can't have all the carbs, but the fry-up for me, it's the greatest. It's my winner. And also,
without beans?
No, I don't know, I can take or leave. But
you can't have the beans on keto.
I don't know, it depends. Because you get a certain allocation per day, you've certain metrics.
That's
But
true.
I'm a fiend for brunch as well. So it's like my favourite thing at the weekend is just to go out with the gang and go for brunch.
I used to do that in my youth.
Yeah.
It's fun.
But I'm referring to my current as your. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. It makes me feel better. But I do think that this feels like yet another round of let's just find any old, any old pooping,
any fun that we might be having.
Any fun-sucking government minister adjacent doctor who can agree that something this week gives you insert thing here.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got through this phase every few years.
Well, it's like every other week we find out that red wine can give you cancer, and then it doesn't give you cancer.
But other weeks it can prevent it. Other weeks,
yeah. I think it's just to keep us on our toes. Really, look, we all know that eating too much of anything is bad.
I swear, I'm waiting for one of these doctors to come out and say, actually, 2 cigarettes a day, good for you.
That is the sweet spot.
That's it.
Just two a day. That won't do you any harm at all. Of course, they're never going to say that, children, if you're listening, so don't do it.
Unless they can tax them individually.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. So-called tough nut exposed as a fraud. Britain's hardest seagull is a wuss. Now, what's funny about this is I think it was yesterday's front page of the Star had the big picture of a seagull saying this is the world's toughest seagull. And now they're dissing their own story.
I'm going to rip off the movie The Shallows when I ask this, but was his name Steven Seagal?
Very good, very good. But it's like the news, not the news of the world, the Sunday Sport. One time...
That still exists?
It does still exist. And I had the great fortune of interviewing the editor of it for a
Amazing.
podcast. And he's a brilliant... And they're really good journalists, actually. He's brilliant. And from one of his front pages had... something like bus spotted, crashed on the moon, and a picture of, a bus, like the Star do it.
Dr. Who been at it again.
Yeah. And then the following week, its front page was bus crash on moon fraud.
Flying in the face of all the legitimate bus crashes on the moon. Yeah.
But I love the fact that they diss their own front page. It just made me laugh. They're very clever, very funny people, proper journalists. The Independent, again, that image, blood-stained runaway cavalry horse rampage through London rush hour streets. 2 spooked horses gallop along Aldwych yesterday after
Would it be fair to say that these horses have taken the lead on today's stories?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they are... I mean, it's such an extraordinary sight and so unusual as well, actually, and very, very scary.
There's something COVID era about it. Because the streets are dead.
The
streets are so empty. You've seen these solitary animals in the middle of it. There's something very COVID era about that image.
Or 28 days later.
Exactly that. But did you have that experience during COVID of walking through central London, like just down the middle of the road? And I remember walking through Holborn. What an experience! Yeah, it really was. Sabre-rattling Sunak. EU must spend more on NATO to fight Putin. Now, this is what America have been calling for, or Trump more specifically has been calling for the Europe to spend more money on defence. We love a villain.
That's because Rishi Sunak has now said that we will spend 2.5% of GDP on defence. Really? Do we not have slightly more pressing issues? Well, according to people I speak to in geopolitics, no. No? No. But actually, this is quite important. I mean, I don't want to go all America first kind of idea about let's just solve us and then solve the rest of the world. But you just don't think like... It just seems like another attempt to, let's take a guy that we already know is a problematic villain on the world stage and let's somehow, populistically vilify him further. Like, it's because we always need a bad guy. Like the narrative, the societal narrative. We have got quite a few at the moment. But we don't have a primary one. It's like for 20 years we had Bin Laden. Yeah. Right? And that was it. After Saddam was dead, we then went back to fixating on Bin Laden. He became the world's most notorious bad guy. Kim Jong-un, he's a bad guy. He wasn't really as prominent a villain because he never really did anything. Yeah. I mean, occasionally threatened to, but it wasn't like the other two. And I feel like Putin, who actually does, things in the world, like externally, I feel like he's an easy target for, we need to make him the new primary global villain. But I think he probably is. I don't know, would you start getting into different things around the world and start getting into like Gaza and things like that? It's up there. I know, but I think he is the archetypal villain, isn't he? That's it, though. Archetypical. That's it, isn't it? He's archetypical. He's kind of cliched. Yeah. And also... Russian. He's Russian. Not only is he Russian, he's quite a cliched Russian. He fits the archetypical image of how we want the Russian bad guy to be. So it makes absolute sense that a prime minister with, let's be honest, quite low popularity and not a brilliant track record would immediately gravitate towards, there's a bad guy over there, let's unify and take him out. Everyone behind me. Yeah. Because it makes him more important. And also it makes him look strong, which means that he's hoping that will translate into more votes. Fat chance. I know. They're getting us to give up the fried breakfast, so slim chance. But slim chance. Right, we've got to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere because Van and I will be here when we get back. Hi, very good evening to you. It's Petrie here until 1 o'clock tomorrow morning. And with me in the studio is film critic Van Connor. And we are going through the newspapers for tomorrow for you. So we're on to the I now. And again, it's revealed Labour's plan to nationalise UK railways. I think this is just a bit of virtue signalling by them. blah blah. I'm not sure it'll ever happen. But you found a story you liked.
Oh yes, there's a story on the front page of the Eye today, tomorrow at foot. It says, "Help! Everyone has given up alcohol except me." And you and I, obviously, during the break, were discussing this because it is a real trend now. It's kind of trendy to be sober now, and it seems to be. I think this is
like young people though don't drink; they mostly smoke weed.
Well, I don't smoke weed particularly. I'll get to that, but I think it has bled through from the younger generation. But no, it's because the younger generation have access to so many more fun ways to consume narcotics than we ever had coming up. Like, if you're using weed, for example, as an obvious one. For instance, now you can have, edibles a lot. You can get a hold of edibles, like professional grade edibles, a lot easier than you can get a hold of bud on the street. Yeah. Cannabis vape carts, you can get pretty easily, which, again...
all illegal.
All illegal, obviously. Nobody is endorsing these things. Nobody would, of course.
No, of course not.
But yeah, this idea of sobriety becoming the new cool thing, it's been creeping up for a few years now. And I think we were talking about, in the break, about how Sober Curious has started turning up.
I can't believe that's the thing, because I don't do dating apps. But and you just look because you're curious.
Naturally, yeah, Cole, yeah.
But apparently it is a thing now to put on your dating app that you are sober curious.
Sober curious. You can be sober or you can be sober curious.
Which means you'd be prepared to date somebody who was sober.
Yeah, and be prepared to experiment with sobriety yourself, for instance. And you mean, because obviously Dry January is a thing on the calendar now. You know how you have Movember every year? Well, Dry January...
I always do really well in Movember.
Do you do well in Movember? I look absolutely a bit... I can't quite reach Burt Reynolds' level myself, I gave up.
Smurf.
I look more like that really crap episode of Friends when they grow the stashes.
Right.
That's what I look like. Chandler. But Dry January seems to have become a thing. So there is quite a populist movement behind sobriety these days. And you do see it at the beginning of the year because you get Veganuary, but you also get Dry January at the same time. I would argue if you're going sober and trying to go vegan in the same month, your life probably isn't worth living.
Probably not.
Or at least not worth enjoying. But yeah, I do feel this, where every now and again you do find yourself in a social circle where you are the only drinker. I'm sure most of us experience it with smoking, I think.
Yeah, it's true. No, it's true. And I mean, if I'm driving, I don't even have one drink. I won't even have one alcoholic drink. So often if I go to a party or something and I'm driving, then I'm the sober one anyway.
I swear I thought you were going to say, when I'm driving, I never drink. Like as if you were just like nailing back a glass of Pinot behind the wheel.
Behind the wheel, no. I just won't do it. I think that's probably a generational thing. That I just think drink driving is one of the worst things ever. So I would never do it. But and so it really is. If people come around to me, then I'll drink. Is
that why you're always the hostess? Is that what it is? You're usually the hostess. It's like, screw it, I'm going to drink.
Yeah, that's fair. That's true. Yeah, I do invite people. Invite me around all the time. So, you're here, I can have a drink now.
Uber rates being what they are.
And also I don't drink on my own, so it's nice to invite people around all the time.
There is another story on the Eye today as well. This Goodbye Jim Hello Longevity Clinic story. So this is about £60,000 a year clubs to extend healthy life. Now this happens to coincide with a thing I'd seen on, of all things, it was an Instagram post by the actor Jeremy Piven. Today, Jeremy Piven obviously played Ari Gold in Entourage. Is where I think most people who know him from that. And he put out a post today about one of these clinics, and I didn't know this was a thing. And this is where you pay an extortionate sum of money, in this case 60 grand, for what is referred to as a longevity clinic. In that case, I think his one was called something like the Health Garage. Something like that. And they send 4 guys round your house to basically crick your back and tell you stand up straight and don't slouch and all this. And the idea is that, telling you how to functionally, move about as an actual human being is somehow a health movement.
Oh, it's just another fad, isn't it?
And he put the before and after pictures up of him before and after. I'm like, you literally look like you were slouching in one picture, and that costs you 60 grand to not slouch.
I'd have told him that for 50.
I bought one of those back brace things on Amazon for £10. It fixed me in 3 weeks.
It is ridiculous. A £60,000 per year club to extend healthy life. What an absolute joy. Well, if a fool and his money or her money is easily parted. So
I'd rather keep the 60 grand and still be unhealthy, if I'm honest.
Yeah, me too. I'd rather spend it on booze and fags, to be fair. The Sun newspaper, Beatrice X in drug death. Princess Beatrice's bad boy, first boyfriend, has died of a suspected drug overdose. This is very sad. Paolo Liozzo, 41, who he dated when they was, I think, 17, was found dead in a Miami hotel room. That is sad, isn't it? Somebody at that age, just with drugs. I sort of do remember him being around as well. I
really do. I knew very little of Princess Beatrice.
Yeah,
really
I know.
I got really distracted. I thought the woman on the front page was the Twitch gamer Sarah Spooks. So
that's a picture of me yesterday.
Do you know I can see the resemblance?
Yeah, thanks. Well, they used my body. They put a different face on. Obviously.
Oh, that explains it. I knew I recognised those curves.
Yeah, that was it. They do it all the time to me, Van. It's just not fair, is it, really? The Financial Times, broadcasters bias alert. This is the one that I think you've circled this. It says, Watchdog Ofcom has warned channels of the importance of impartiality ahead of the general election after it reinforced rules for television broadcasters using politicians as presenters. I think they should be banned entirely.
I mean, we're kind of in the opportune building to have that discussion, really, aren't we?
Just going to say, I've just said it as it is.
Yep.
This is the home of common sense. It's interesting because Ofcom has stopped short of banning these people, but this is also broadcasters like GB News have got Rees-Mogg and people like that who are presenters. And during election purdah, they're saying that politicians are not allowed to broadcast any news stories. And that means anybody who's affiliated with a party. Yeah. Like, that's not just a serving MP, that's anybody.
There's a story I always remember from the US, from San Francisco, and it was about the actor George Takei, who played Sulu on Star Trek. George Takei, one point, I forget when this was, had tried to run for mayor of San Francisco and then dropped out. And he dropped out because it was brought to his attention that by virtue of having been on Star Trek a decade or so previously, and the fact that it was rerun on television all the time, that would technically make him ineligible because it violated the sanctity of election rules. Oh, wow. When you contrast that with having Nadine Dorries presenting a bloody talk show...
Not anymore.
Well, yes.
Not anymore. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think that they should be allowed, and there are other radio stations that are involved with that as well. And it makes it very difficult actually for the bosses when election purdah comes round, and you've got people who are affiliated with certain political parties who aren't then allowed to broadcast. So, and they shouldn't be. Because there is way too much power
it's the nature
in front
of the beast.
Of a microphone, and you can't. And also, you can't help thinking, well, okay, you have a programme, let's say, presented by Boris Johnson, and suddenly, and he's doing a current affairs programme, which he is allowed to do, and suddenly a bomb goes off somewhere. You can't have him then deliver the news,
no,
because that would be in violation of the Ofcom ruling. They're not allowed to deliver news. They're not allowed to deliver the news headlines.
Of course. I've got a counter proposal for you, though.
Go on.
I think that during the election season, all of these, politicians who are in presenting roles should be forced, as a mandatory rule, to have a co-presenter who happens to be from the opposite party.
That'd be great.
That would be hilarious, wouldn't it?
It would. And they have to be chained together, handcuffed together.
Has to be it, yeah.
For the whole 9 weeks.
Exactly. One has the cigarettes, one has the lighter, one has the ice cubes, one has the glasses.
See, I reckon you should get in touch with Ofcom with that. I think that's brilliant.
I think I'd run it better than Ofcom do currently, but there you
go. Right, so Labour again on the front of the Metro, nationalise rail in 5 years. Funny that coincides with how long their first stint might be, but it's not going to happen.
I just want to say as well, the image that they've chosen for this, of the 5 departure boards at the top of this, that gives me PTSD just looking at that, because I spent so much of my life at Euston staring at this exact board, and it all says cancelled or delayed. So the minute I see the boards themselves, it triggers an automatic, jittery response in me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know when that happens. Happening.
Yeah, well, because they're always cancelled, aren't they? Election promise to axe franchises, but industry warns political plan will raise costs. Once they sit down with the back of a fag packet and work out how much it's going to cost, and like I said, I've spoken to experts on this over the years, And it's eye-watering. There's just no way we could afford it. And Labour has also said, look, there are certain things we're not going to be able to afford to do, so we're not going to start making ridiculous promises. Well, this seems to be a ridiculous promise.
This feels like one of those, doesn't it?
Yeah,
doesn't it? This
really
feels like one of those, we'll get you back in the EU, we'll reprivatise the trains, we'll bring back the old passport colours, all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah, it really does. And by the way, you can all have a unicorn each.
Exactly that, yeah.
Work.
You want opal fruits back? Done. It's one of them.
We call them marathons and not Snickers.
Exactly.
Right, so the Daily Telegraph, this is interesting. Labour has refused to match the Prime Minister's defence budget, and this is that we will be spending 2.5% of GDP. It's currently around 2.3%. So it doesn't feel like it's that big a lift, but it is because it's GDP, would be spent on defence by 2030. So that would be ratcheting up. And Labour's position, they have said previous to this, is we will spend more on defence as soon as budgets allow. So they're going to buy back the railways, but not spend it on defence.
But hang on, so they're going to buy back the railways. They're not going to have all the income from all the petrol vehicles and the ULEZ fees because we'll all be on electric cars by then, according to their original estimates.
And smoking.
And we're not smoking.
Yeah.
So, this really is starting to feel like magic beans for a government.
It really does. But, I know what Starmer's trying to do. He's trying to say, well, look, we'll do it when we can afford it. The trouble is that war doesn't often wait until you can afford it. So I know which side I'd be on if this were the only issue. We've just been talking about drinking and how it seems that younger people are not drinking. Well, this story on the front of the Telegraph says otherwise. Child drinkers rise in generation lockdown. The number of children in England consuming alcohol has risen hugely in generation lockdown. I don't know what that generation is, but to reach record levels. 1 in 3 has tried an alcoholic drink by the age of 11. Oh, you didn't. That doesn't make you
by 11?
Yeah.
About then, yeah. I think, maybe 11, 12.
Yeah.
Maybe.
After a steep rise in drinking amongst a generation who grew up in the shadow of the COVID lockdown.
No, I think, but this generation lockdown thing, I think that is a bit of a snotty way of saying Gen Z.
Oh, right.
I think that's what they're doing. It is the Telegraph, after all. The other thing is, as well, this has been determined by the World Health Organization, which refers specifically to British children. Now, on a global comparative spectrum, I would imagine that even our lower figures still have us above certain other countries.
Yeah.
Like, anecdotally, though, you do something like, no, not all kids are really interested in booze. Now they're all interested in vapes and shroom chocolates and canna gummies.
I think to say 1 in 3 children has tried an alcoholic drink does not make them child drinkers.
Exactly.
Right. I imagine brown paper bags around whiskey bottles.
I tried playing tennis once. I wouldn't exactly call myself a professional.
Exactly.
I wouldn't say I'm a tennis enthusiast.
It seems a bit of hyperbole. This is interesting, though. In Scotland, more than 1,000 higher-rate taxpayers fled Scotland to the rest of the UK after Nicola Sturgeon's government introduced new income tax bans. So basically, if you were living in Scotland at a certain income tax band, you paid more tax than you did if you lived in England. So what do? Hop over the wall. Who blames them? No one.
I mean, historically speaking, there is a certain irony to that.
But ridiculous. I mean, how can you have a separate tax bracket just, within a mile? That's nonsense. That doesn't make any sense at all.
To be fair, though, I grew up in the Middle East where, we were half an hour from any country's border, and there were very different tax laws in every single one.
Yeah, it probably was, actually. Yeah, no, you're right about that. But I just think, who didn't see this coming? That's what I'd like to say. Of course that was going to happen, and it's an indication of what would happen if the tax bans, if Labour tries to go that route here in introducing more tax for people in brackets. Higher up, because people just leave. They just take their money with them.
As they've demonstrated, yeah.
As has been demonstrated. Right, just before the break, it says England worst in world for underage drinking. A third of 11-year-olds have had alcohol. That does not make them drinkers, I'm sorry.
It really doesn't.
It really, really doesn't. And again, the fabulous picture of those horses. I mean, it's fabulous, but it is distressing as well.
Somebody's making a fortune on Getty Images today.
Yeah.
Well, because they're all from slightly different angles.
Oh,
so I think this is a row of people, and they've just all uploaded Getty Images, and they've been paid accordingly.
And they are absolutely extraordinary. That poor horse, I hope he's okay. Right, let's take a quick break, but we will be back in just a moment. Hello and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie with you until 1 o'clock, and with me in the studio is Van Connor. I tell you what, the programme you want to hear is the one that we have when the adverts are going on. That's the conversation.
Don't think it's broadcastable.
I don't think it's broadcastable, no. Let's talk about the Daily Express, and I am intrigued as to why in the other newspapers it wasn't. This story didn't have a bigger frontage on the page, on the front page. But the Daily Express has gone huge on this. Horror in the playground as teachers stabbed. And this is a teacher who was slashed across the neck as he bravely tried to stop an alleged attack on a pupil. Terrified students scaled the fence. More than 1,000 pupils went into class lockdown. This is in Carmarthenshire, South Wales, and the emergency services alerted a code red in the school, and the school was locked down. So a second teacher was also in the attack. Her injuries were said to be superficial. Fortunately, I mean, although horrific, doesn't appear that anybody's been seriously injured here. But this is a teenager has now been arrested and charged with, I believe it's attempted murder.
I could believe that.
Extraordinary.
I mean, apparently he used a butterfly knife.
Yeah, those are the ones they're like flick knives, right?
Yeah, the one that Hit Girl uses in Kick-Ass, the one you flick around. And,
okay,
yeah.
so it is like a flick knife.
It flicks open, you can swizzle it in your hand.
I mean, what is she doing with that in the first place?
I mean, one imagines because it looks very cool, but I just want to know how she got a hold of it.
I don't know. I suppose you can get it online, can't you? I guess
nowadays, possibly, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, this is really worrying. This has just reminded me of Boomtown Rats. I Don't Like Mondays, because they wrote that song about a killer in America who went to shoot a school shooter, and when it was a girl, and when she was asked why she murdered her schoolmate, she said, "I don't like Mondays." And that was the whole thing of the song. But to imagine a young girl going into a school aged around about 13, 14.
But it's this story of the pupils having to scale the fence. Apparently 7 feet high, the perimeter fence of the school, which... average. We've all seen the average sort of school fence. I can believe that's like 7 feet. But to imagine, like all
being
the pupils climbing up, I'm surprised the fence didn't actually buckle under the pressure, because you'd imagine they weren't doing it one at a time.
Yeah, but also just to imagine if this had been a country where guns were more easily available, and that in America we were talking about this. The most dangerous occupation for a child in America is to attend school, and that is horrifying. And this. You can easily see how this could have been, had guns been more available, a school shooting situation. Thank goodness we don't have them. They're uniquely American. I
mean, that said here, I mean, not uniquely, because I mean... Australia had its instance in the 90s as well.
They've had one or two.
Well, they had one very famous one.
Yeah, but that's it.
But I'm very interested here to see what the knock-on effect is going to be for the safety of schools on a broader spectrum nationally with this. If you look at, for instance, an increase in security after Dunblane, for instance, several decades ago now. If you look at how whenever there is, I say whenever there is because it happens so frequently, a prolific mass shooting in a school in America, for instance, how that then sees all of the schools up security, as if this is something that just becomes something that is catching.
Just normal.
This is something that can be infectious. I'd be very interested to see what effect this is going to have with the broader safety of schools. I
do know that schools, particularly, I don't know if it's around the country, because I only have my own reference on this, but my son went to Richmond Sixth Form College, and back in the day, and they already had knife arches. So the kids would have to walk through knife arches. And there would also be, unexpected stop and search. So, the police would turn up at some points and check people's bags before they got to the knife arches. But, that was 10 years ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, that he was there, and they already had knife arches. So I suspect that more schools have got that capability already to do that. And had this school had that, then she presumably wouldn't have been able to get this butterfly blade in.
I mean, 2 teachers injured? Is it 2 in the attack? One across the throat and a second as well. Yeah,
a second one as well. It's superficial injuries. But, awful, absolutely awful. It'll be mental health issues, absolutely, no doubt. But we'll find out more if she's ever revealed. I mean, they tend to protect children who commit crimes in that way. So we may never know.
She has been granted anonymity, hasn't she?
Yeah, she will be, I would imagine. But it doesn't stop it getting out.
No, it does not.
Just means we can't. It's so stupid that we can't say it because it'll already be out there. But anyway, what stories did you see today, Van, that you thought that we should have paid more attention to than we did?
Look. Well, this one is. I think I had something else on this page, but it is worth noting that Richard Osman's The Thursday Murder Club has finally gotten a cast, and it includes Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren, and Ben Kingsley.
Oh, you can't get better than that. Isn't Helen Mirren a fox?
Oh, I know, right?
Isn't she?
I know. Those bikini shots still haunt me.
Unbelievable. Yeah. What an absolute fox.
A story I absolutely love here, and this is about Richard Gadd of Baby Reindeer, the new Netflix show, which I have not seen. I know this is about stalking, etc. But he stars in it. He's written it. It's his show, and it is apparently based on some actual things. The stalking element of this has led him to have to address his fans to ask them specifically to stop trying to sleuth who actually stalked him, which is just kind of funny in a sense, because you think, well, that's fandom to an obsessive degree in a sense.
It really is. And also, I mean, he acknowledges that she probably had mental health issues and is a victim herself, and etc., etc. I'm really looking forward to seeing it, but I think I've got to be in the right frame of mind to watch it. I'm very much of a, right, am I prepared yet? Yes, okay, I'll watch it now. What else have you got?
So there's a warning been given here urging women not to use Ozempic or Wegovy, whatever you want to call it. The weight loss drug, which weirdly, again, we all forget, because we all just refer to it as the weight loss drug. That's a diabetes drug.
Yeah, I know.
It's one of those things, it's like Viagra. It's not its original purpose. It just happens to do that. But they've been urging women not to use Ozempic as basically as a treatment for infertility.
What?
This is it. Apparently it has certain treatments for polycystic ovary syndrome. So I was trying to remember the actual term there. It's been sort of viewed of late as a sort of off-label treatment for polycystic ovary syndrome, and people are using this. This seemed to catch on last year, in particular. This particular drug seemed to catch on last year.
It was when all the celebrities started using it.
They apparently have been using it in secret for many years, which doesn't terribly shock you when you look at, an average Hollywood starlet for the last decade or so. But it seems to have found its way over in the past 12 months. And I do believe now that you can realistically get the Wegovy treatment for, I think it's about £150 to £200 a month. Right. Generally speaking, are you familiar? How familiar are you with this?
No, I'm familiar with it in as much as I've seen the stories in the paper, and there's always, I lost 3 stone on Ozempic, but here are the side effects. Don't use it, or
because there are rumours. There's a theory going around that Donald Trump is on this at the moment. Yeah. This is the cause for Donald Trump's sudden weight loss. In actual fact, I don't think so.
Anybody that I see who has sudden weight loss, I'm going, yeah, go on.
You see, and I'm doing it the hard way.
You're doing it the hard way.
But in the case of Ozempic, so what you get is effectively like a what do they call the
EpiPen?
EpiPen, that's it. Basically, an EpiPen. It comes in an EpiPen form, and it's an appetite suppressant. That's all it is. It's a diabetes drug, but it also suppresses the natural human appetite. You see,
I would love to lose a little bit of weight, but I would never take a drug to do that. I'm keto like you. So, I just don't...
I wouldn't change a thing about you, Petrie.
Of course not. I'm fabulous. No, I'm joking. Yeah, it's an odd thing, isn't it? And then they're saying that, that anybody who takes a drug that isn't prescribed, I think you're mad. And also getting it online, you don't know that's the real thing.
I will confess to you that when my father and I were talking years ago, he's based in the Middle East, he would bring me over the hay fever injection, like just buy it over the counter, would bring me that home every year. And because they refuse to give it you on the NHS, or you can't even do it privately because it's a hormone, he would also bring me a stack of syringes back, like 3 years worth of this drug. And I would genuinely stand around my kitchen and have to jab myself in the ass with this injection once every summer.
Really?
Yep. True story. And it worked like a dream.
Yeah, blimey.
Don't even have hay fever. I think I overdosed years ago. I must have built up a tolerance.
No, do you know why? Because you're as far as allergies go, every cell in your body is changed every 7 years. Every 7 years, you're a completely different human being, and that's when sometimes you can develop allergies or you get rid of allergies. Because you are a brand new human being. Every cell, every 7 years, has been changed.
I do feel like I have a different personality every 7 years.
Yeah, that's what it is. Getting new tyres on your car.
Another story I really love today is John Cleese has revealed that he apparently spends 17 grand a year on stem cells to fight aging. Begging the question, when is this going to start working?
I know.
The man is 84.
Is that what it's for?
Apparently, John Cleese, a man who looks, again, like John Cleese, spends nearly 20 grand a year on stem cells to look younger. I have serious questions, and I would consider asking for a refund.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's a lot of money, isn't it? I thought it was for health reason, and I thought he was moaning. But it's to look younger.
You know, when we were talking earlier about doctors saying that different things do different, changing the responses on. Decaf coffee has one as well today.
Decaf coffee
Telegraph.
Is the devil's work.
I agree with you, except my friend who lives near me, who I pop in and see every day, only has decaf in his house. So I drink 2 cups of decaf coffee a day. It drives me insane. Apparently, decaf coffee could help the elderly avoid falls.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to drink the full fat and that's absolutely nonsense.
I'll drink the full fat and have a trip occasionally.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not giving up coffee. I've given up everything out. That is not happening. Van Connor, film critic, thank you very much indeed for that, and we will see you very soon indeed. Now though, going to take a break, and then after that it is the phone in. So get ready to give me a call.